we're asked to find all complex solutions, real and non-real. And then we're going to enter our answers as a comma-separated list. But anyway, we're going to find them for this polynomial function. And as you can see over here, I have graphed the polynomial function to find at least the 1, 0. So we're going to look, and it looks like it is negative 0.5 or negative 1/2. So we have at least 1, 0. So x equals negative 1/2. Now that will help us find the rest of the zeros. And I'm going to use synthetic division to find those. So here's my coefficients, 98 and 50. And if you remember how to do synthetic division, bring down the first one, multiply by 1/2. Well, negative 1/2 times 2 is negative 1. Add negative 4. Negative 1/2 and negative 4 is going to be positive 2. That's going to be 100. And then negative 1/2 times 100, that's going to be negative 50, 0. So what's left? Well, remember this was an x cubed, so this is going to make this a 2x squared minus 4x plus 100, and my remainder 0, which it should be if 1/2 is a 0. So we're going to look at this, and you could see if you could factor it. But we're going to find that, well, the first thing we'll do is greatest common factor. Let's just make it a little easier by factoring out that 2, because I can factor that out of everything. And then if I divide by 2, I'm going to end up with just x squared minus 2x plus 50 equals 0. And this is not going to be factorable, so that means we're going to use the quadratic formula to see what we come up with for our other. Now remember, we're going to have 3 zeros, so we've got 1, and so we're going to need to find 2 more. Equals, well, what's my A, B, and C? A is 1, B is negative 2, and C is 50. So let's plug this in. Negative B plus or minus square root of B squared, well, that's going to be negative 2 squared minus 4 A C. Oh, sorry, C is 50, not negative 2. Let me erase this right here and go back, and that's going to be 50. And let's see if I can make it look a little better. There we go. And that's all over 2 times A, and A is 1. So negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC over 2A. And let's simplify. That's going to be a 2 plus or minus 4. And then 4 times 50 is going to be, and actually it's a negative 4 times 50, which is a negative 200 over 2. And let me get back out of that. And so I get x equals 2 plus or minus square root 4 minus 200 is what? 196. Actually a negative 196 over 2. So that negative under that square root tells me I'm going to have a complex answer. So I'm going the other 2 zeros are going to be complex numbers, and that's all because of that negative being under that square root. So now we need to just simplify and figure out what that complex number is going to be. So we could play around with our calculator and see what we can do with that 196 to see if it will simplify for us. Okay, so I'm going to kind of come over here and let's look at that square root of 196. And remember, we can break that down into 196 times negative 1. So that's the square root of 196 times the square root of negative 1. And the square root of negative 1 is I. And 196 happens to be a perfect square, and it happens to be 14. So I'm going to have x equals 2 plus or minus 14i over 2, and I'm going to break this into 2 separate fractions because we can simplify further. And so it looks like 1 plus 7i and 1 minus 7i are our other two zeros. So there's our three zeros, real and non-real, for this particular polynomial function.